So what is unit testing? So if you try to understand in a simple language, unit testing is simply testing a small piece of code from your application. And that small piece of code can be just a line of code, can be a method or class. Why we need unit testing? So the first is it saves times and money, because many bugs are found at a developer stage when we start to write unit testing, so it basically saves your cost of fixing them. And second, it provides documentation. So basically when you look at a unit test, it acts as a form of living documentation which describes how the individual code should behave. So instead of reading a long written document, just by reviewing the unit test can also give you more context about the application. And third, in CI/CD workflow also the unit test play a great role. For example, you can set up a CI/CD in such a way that you can first run the unit test, and if all the unit tests are passed, then only we can set up to deploy to staging or in the production environment. This will ensure that our code are frequently tested. Second, we are deploying the well-tested code. And lastly, it improves coding practice, because writing a unit test means writing a small and well-testable code, which means it will be easy to maintain. And there are many more advantages of writing the unit testing. How to write unit tests in C#? So to write the unit test in C#, we need a code editor. So that code editor can be Visual Studio or JetBrains Writer or other. And to write a unit test, we'll be using a testing framework, and the testing framework available are XUnit, MSTest, and NUnit. And for this video, we'll be using the NUnit test. Okay, let's start to write some code now. Okay, I'm using JetBrains Writer as I mentioned before. So in JetBrains Writer, we'll be first creating a new solution, and we will write a simple banking application, and later we will start to write unit test for that application. So let's do it. So we go to file and we'll create a new solution. And before unit test, let's write a very simple application. Let's call my banking application, and this will be a very simple application, just to make it very simple to understand, because our main focus is writing unit testing. So let's create this window, and our application is ready. Okay, now let's write some code. So I'll just copy paste the application that I have written into this solution. So here is the application that we'll be using to write a unit testing. So before we go to the code, I'll just run the application and show you how it works. So let me just run this application, and when you run the application, you will see it will show us the account holder, where you can see the name Ara Bajajare, and he has like $1,000 in his balance, and we will showing the three options: want to deposit, want to withdraw, and want to exit. And let's say we want to deposit some money. Press 1, and let's put $100. Now we have 1100. Let's withdraw some money, and let's withdraw like 500, and now we have 600. And we just want to exit the application number 3, and it exit the application. So basically this is a very simple application. And if you go through the coding, I have two folders. One is a model and one is a service. And in the model, there is a bank account class that I have created, and it's very simple. So if you go there, this basically has two properties. One is for account holder, and one is to show you the balance. So to make this example simple, I just use integers so that it's just easy to do the calculation. And I have defined a constructor where I have set the account holder and balance, and I got two methods. One for deposit, when you put the money, the balance will be added, and when you withdraw the same amount, whatever amount you withdraw, that will be deducted from your balance. But I have some check over here, which means I need to check if the balance is greater than amount or not. If it is, then we will deduct from the balance. But if the amount that you are trying to withdraw is bigger than your balance, then we are trying this exception that you cannot withdraw that amount because you only have certain balances. And to run this account, I have created this bank account services, where basically you saw this run bank application method, where I'm saying, okay, I have this loop which will be true until we choose the third application exit. So if you go to handle user action, we are passing the choice, right? And in third choice we have this environment exit, so it will just get out from that loop. Otherwise it will keep running this application. So very simple. And we have this handle deposit and handle withdraw method, which basically we have some console, right, to show the amount to deposit, and we will read that the amount, and we will try to parse that into the integer. And if we can successfully parse it, then we will call this account deposit method, which is basically this one, to add the amount in the balance. Very straightforward. Overall, this is a very simple application. You can see in the program I'm just instancing the account, where I'm passing the account holder name and its initial balance, and then I'm calling this bank account service, where I'm passing the account and run application to run the application. Now our goal is to write some unit tests to test this bank account. So this is very simple, but in real life it will be more complex. But we need to understand in the base level, before we jump into the complex one. So I thought, maybe this will be the very easy to understand example for anyone who's just starting to learn unit testing. Okay, let's write the unit test application for this console application. Since we have written this console application in a .NET Core, so we need to make sure that when you write a unit test, when you create a unit test project, you also need to select the .NET Core and not the .NET Framework. If you do that, you will be in problem. So go to .NET Core and write unit test project name. I would go with my banking application to have the same naming, but in the end I'll write unit test, and I will go with XUnit, language C#, framework .NET 6, great. And this will create this beautiful unit test project for you. So let me delete this one. So we'll start with writing the unit test class. And so since our main logic is deposit and withdraw method, which is inside the bank account, so what I will do is I'll write a new unit test class as a bank account test and enter. So that will tell me that, okay, this unit test is for this bank account. This is a good naming practice and I always prefer that. And after that, what we need to do is we need to write unit test. Okay, so as I mentioned before, our main focus is writing unit tests for deposit and withdraw, just to make sure that those methods are working as expected. So let's start with writing unit tests for deposit first. So what we can do is in bank account, let's write a method. So let's write a unit test to test the deposit method. So I will go with deposit method, and what we are testing is underscore, we will write some scenario. Okay, so that will be like when you are depositing the valid amount in the deposit, what should be the expectation? It should return the correct balance, right? That is our expectation. And you need to decorate that with faq to know that it's a unit test. And And there is a general rule when you're writing a unit test, which means there will be three parts. One is arrange, one is act, and one is assert. So in arrange part, we will just make an arrangement before we actually test the code, and in act section we actually act, which means we run the services to check the deposit method, and assertion, this is to check whether our expectation meet with the actual like the result. So in this case, in arrange, let's say we arrange by creating new account, and new account, press Control, comma, and that will create type account. Bank account. Sorry, that's the bank account. My bad. Bank account, and press Control and dot, and write this reference, which will be this one. And in errands, let's say we are creating account. Let's say any name, maybe John. Just John. And in account, let's say he has $100 in his account. He's a poor guy. Okay. Now we have this arrange section where we set up this account, and the next thing is we need to act, which is account.deposit. Let's say in $100 we are giving here another $100. So in assertion, as I say, is we are now testing if this deposit function is working as expected. So what we are setting is we will assert equal, our expectation is when you have 100 and you add one more 100, then the expectation will be 200, right? And that will be account.balance. So your balance would be 200. So to run this test, what you need to do is you can just press this green run button, and this will run, and you can see you can also press Alt 8, or you can press here, and it will show that okay, your tests work. When you deposit 100 with your starting balance as 100, you will have 200, which is correct. Now let's say instead of 200 you say okay, expectation is like 300, then what will happen? It means something is wrong, right? So when you run this index again, it will fail because you're writing your unit test in the correct way, because mathematically 100 and 100 is 200, so 200. And by chance, if there is any bug in your code, like in deposit, like let's say some other developer pick up your code, he did some refactoring, and let's say instead of plus, he mistakenly removed the plus. As I mentioned earlier, this is just a basic example, but in a real world example, that deposit function will be like a very complex, and there will be lots of code. And if just imagine if there is a small changes that the other developer made, that he should not be making that changes, then let's see what will happen in this case. Now if you go back to unit test, you can see logically it's correct, like when you have 100 and 100 it should be 200, but when you run, the unit test will fail. See? So here you can now know that okay, my unit test is failing, which means something is wrong. The logic has been changed. So you can just go here and you can check your code, what went wrong. It's say line 18. So over here you can go, okay, something is wrong, and as a developer you can investigate this deposit method, and okay, something wrong over here, you can fix it. And you can again run the unit test again to ensure that the logic is working as expected. So that saves your like time, especially like when you are trying to like refactoring your code. And when you do have unit tests, like it saves you like like from those accident to like make any mistakes. Now if you want to test like the same deposit function with different value, not just with 100 and like initial balance 100, but with different values, what you can do is you can modify this function to write okay, let's not modify, let's try at a new one, and we'll say public void deposit amount will return correct balance. And this time we will be testing with different balances and different amount. So for that, what we can do is, instead of using flag attribute, we can use the theory attribute, and then we can say inline data attribute. And over inline data attribute, like now what you can do is this deposit amount correct balance, you can add some parameter. Let's say balance, and let's say the deposit amount. Now you can pass this value from here. The first is the balance, right? The balance rate can be like $1,000, and when you have initial balance as 1,000 and you deposit another 1,000, what is the expected? The expected amount will be like 2,000, right? So let's say int expected balance, right? So when you use the inline data, then you can pass a different value. Like now what I can do is I can just copy paste. You can press this Ctrl D, and let's say now we are trying to test this function with 4 different data. Like let's say you want to test with $1,000, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and let's deposit maybe maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. So mathematically 1,100, 2,000, 2,000, 4,000, 4,000, 6,000, and 448. Right? This means we are testing the different data to verify, to ensure that this deposit amount is working as expected. And again, we will do the same thing. We will have arrange, act, and assert, and we will do the same thing like above. So just copy paste arrange. Let me just copy paste everything to save time. Now instead of 100, we will just pass the balance, and this will be like deposit amount, and this will be like expected balance. Now when you are running this function, you are actually testing the 4 unit test because you have 4 inline data. So you will see over here you are testing for amount. So by chance if something is wrong, like okay 2,000 plus, you have 2,000 balance, then if you run the unit test, you will see the result. You will see, okay, these 3 are passed, but this one is wrong, which means something is wrong. So in this case, you definitely know that the supply data is wrong. But my point is, like you can try the same method with different data to ensure that, okay, this one is working as expected. Cool. Now let's write the unit test for withdraw. So it will be pretty much similar to what we did in the deposit, but for withdraw I want to write a unit test for this condition. So for that, what I need to do is go to the bank account test, and let's say back, let's say public void withdraw, right? withdraw, and when you look at the method withdraw, right, withdraw, the condition will be like balance smaller than withdraw amount. Okay, this is the condition. So when your balance is smaller than the withdraw amount, it should throw exception, right? So let's try to write in this for this one. So in this case, same thing, we can just copy paste, save some time, right? But instead of deposit, we will withdraw. And in this case, to throw that exception, what we need to do is we need to withdraw the excess amount. So if you have like $100, you need to withdraw more than 100. So let's say $2,000. So to throw the exception, in exception case, we need to do something different. So what we need to do is we need to write, what we need to do is we can write like, okay, fair exception, because definitely this will throw exception. So we can say egg and assert, and what we can do is exception equal to assertor throws, because that will throw exception, right? And we'll add arrow condition, and so this will give you the exception, and we can now check assert.equal, and the exception message we will just check, okay, the expected exception and the actual expected message. So if you look at the logic over here in exception, what you have is this exception, right? So we'll just copy that exception over here, and so what we are expecting is, okay, you cannot withdraw. So the amount is, we are trying to withdraw 200, yes, so you cannot withdraw 200, you only have 100. So this is the expected result, yes. So let's try. Okay, something is wrong. So exception, okay, so we don't know. Okay, wait, let's see. You cannot withdraw, you only have 100. You cannot withdraw $200. Okay, so the dollar value, so everything seems to be right, just the dollar value. So you are missing the dollar value over here. So dollar, and let's run it again. So you can see this is working as expected. So whenever you try to withdraw the amount which is excess than your balance, it will throw that exception. And similar to deposit, you know, like if you want to test with different value, you need to use the inline data. So you need to first use the theory. Yes, I'll quickly write it. Save some time. Inline data. And so let's say initial balance 1000, trying to withdraw 2000, and expected is that will be like balance withdraw amount, yes, and we may need the expected balance. Yes, no, we don't need expected, we just need balance and withdraw, right? So in this case, what we can do is, okay, we try to withdraw amount here, balance, right? And now instead of 200 hard coded, what you can do is you can simply write balance. You cannot withdraw amount. You only have, that's the balance, right? So replace 100 with balance. Now with that amount, if you run, okay, something is wrong. Let's see. Okay, we have two methods with the same name, so let's rename it withdraw balance. Let's say balance smaller than withdraw amount. So for this one, let's make it this amount for now. And if you build, Control B, make sure spelling build succeeded, go over here, withdraw balance, run unit test, run. Okay, this one is working. Now you can try with different data. Just Control D, and let's say you have initial balance 3,000 and you try to withdraw 3,000. Let's say 2,000 and you try to withdraw 3,000, 4,000, let's say. Now since you are passing different data, in all cases it should work. Yes, so when you run on, in all cases it will work, which means our withdraw function is working as expected. And if by chance, if we do something silly like, okay, your initial balance is 2,000 and you try to withdraw 1,000, which means this doesn't make sense, it should not throw exception. Yes, so in this case, if you run, what will happen? This 2 will pass because it's matched the condition what it's supposed to do. But in this case, this doesn't work because it doesn't match, because you can withdraw 1,000 when you have balance 2,000. So this will ensure that, okay, your logic or something is wrong. Yes, so let's fix it and let's run it again. Right, okay, let's fix this one also. What is that error? With 4,000, yes, 2,000, deposit amount 4,000. Okay, expected 8,000, but actually 6,000. 4,000 plus 4,000, 8,000. 4,000 plus 6,000. Okay, looks right. 100, 102, 200, 204, 336, 448. Let's run all again. Okay, so all unit tests are working as expected. Now, as I mentioned in previous also, let's say you are deploying this application, but you want to ensure that before you deploy this application into the production environment, all those logic are fine. So what you can do is in the CI/CD pipelining, you can add some code to say, okay, run this unit test before you deploy, and that will ensure that, okay, everything is now tick, everything is passed. This code, this logic is safe to deploy to production. All right, so far we have written the unit test cases, and now we have a very basic idea of how to write a unit test. Yes, and let's say, in this example, we are not using any external dependency, but in a real life application, you will have to deal with different dependency. For example, in the same application, let's say you are using the email services, right? But when you are testing your code, you just don't want to test the email services, because that's the external dependency, and we are writing unit tests to test our code, not the external dependency. I mean, like the external, the services. So in that case, how can we write unit tests? So let's discuss that. Okay, so first, to understand this mocking, let's add the services. Let's say you have this interface where you have like email services, right? And let's say you have this method bool send email about the amount that you deposited or withdraw, right? And let's say you have a class that actually implement these services, and let's implement that. Control dot implement missing member, right? And let's just imagine that this is the concrete implementation, right? Where you are writing, okay, the amount is let's say console send email send about the amount, and let's say so just imagine that if amount is, let's say, like greater than 100. This is a very simple example. It doesn't make sense, but just try to understand the logic. If amount is greater than 100, then you're sending the email, which means you return true. In rest of the cases, you are not sending the email. Okay. Now let's just imagine that this email service is your external dependency that you are using in your application. But your goal is not to test these services. You just want to test your existing services, but somehow that dependency is being used, which is blocking you to test your code. So let's try to create that scenario in our application. So let's imagine that we are using these external services in our logic. Let's say over here, now we have this email services. Let's say email service, right, email services, and let's do some funny thing. Let's say before the balance is updated, it's actually doing this thing. Let's say the email services dot send email amount. So when that condition is true only, then only it is actually doing the balance is being updated. Just consider that. Okay, so you want to test your code deposit, and you want to test this logic where you are updating the amount, but in order to test these services, you also need these email services, but you don't want to write any unit tests, or you want to implement that email because that's the external services, and you want to consider that, okay, this should always be true. I don't care, it should always be true, and I want to test this condition. So in this case, the mocking will play an important role. What does mocking will do is, we will just mock this email services, and we'll say that, okay, whenever this email service is used in our code, we will just bypass it. I mean, like, let's say if we are using the email services in our unit test with sending a certain amount, then in this case consider this as a true, so that I can actually test my code, right? So let's do it. So for mocking, we do have different mocking framework, but for this video I'll use NSubstitute. So what is that? We will go in deeply. So what is NSubstitute? So NSubstitute is a friendly substitute for .NET mocking language, which means like when you are writing a unit test for your application and where there are some dependency that you want to bypass so that you can actually test your code, in such scenario, this will play a great role. So for example, in our application, let's just imagine that this email service is an external dependency and it is doing some method, it's sending the email, and if this condition is passed only, then only it is updating our balance, right? Which means this method, this services is blocking our way to test our balance, right? So using NSubstitute, what we can do is we can make this statement true so that it will always pass this condition to test our main logic, which is updating the amount. So how we will do that? You can also go through this, documentation to understand what NSubstitute is. But for now, let's install this NuGet package and let's try to mock this email services so that we can write some unit tests to to test if our unit test deposit is working as expected. So to install NSubstitute, what you need to do is you need to go to NuGet and search for NSubstitute. Okay, this one. Click this one and you want to install in your test project. Okay, install, and this will install this NuGet package in their test project. So you can see over here it's saying 5.1.0, which means it's installed now. Now before we do anything, let's jump into the unit test because it looks like there are some error. So if we control B, I assume it will fail to build. Let's build a solution. Control B. Build succeeded. Okay. Email services, right? Okay, this one is failing. So what it is failing is because now in the bank account we have this external dependency, we need to pass something here, right? And what we are trying to avoid is implementing in line. Trying to avoid this creating the new email services, because we are considering this as an external dependency for which we don't want to create any instance or we want to do anything. So in Aaron's part, what we need to do is we need to say, okay, mock email service, and we can say substitute. It will inherit that namespace and substitute. And what we are substituting, we are substituting the email service, right? Cool. Now instead of passing this new email, what we can do is we can just pass this mock email service, which will be like the mocking object. And then now we can run the test. There are error because we are missing. So for a quick one, let's copy paste, and let's say mock email, and mock email. Okay, let's control B and let's hope everything is building. Wait, unit test, run. Okay, at least there is no build error, just the unit tests are now failing. So let's check with this one first, which is so basically, as I mentioned, the unit test is working as expected, but now we have made some changes in the code to add some external dependency, right, when we are doing deposit. So that has impacted our code. And as I mentioned, like we are not interested in the services, and we for our application we consider this should always be true. So what we can do is, now over here, when we are mocking these email services, what we can do is mock email services when it send email, when it call that method send email, which is on our way, right? And we can even define the amount, but instead of defining the definite amount, what I will say is I will use this argument.any, and that will be the integer. What it's saying is whatever value, doesn't matter, 100, 200, whatever integer value it will pass within the send email, I want that to return true. So in essence, but what I'm saying is, now if in my code, if I found these services with this method, I want this to return true. So let's now run the unit test and see it all passed, because now we have mocked this, right? And we can do different thing, like we can say, okay, I want to return false. And if you run, now it will break, because it has now impacted our logic, right? But the general idea is, like we have now power to to manipulate this external dependency. So if you go with other one, let's run all the unit tests. Okay, and this one is fail as well. So okay, I expected 200, actually it's 100. So we can do one thing, we can also debug that. So at the moment we haven't debugged anyone, but you can also debug by just clicking debug, and I will also show you what value you will see in the mock email services. So it's taking time, come on. Yep. So when you press F10, like in Visual Studio, you will see this like dummy value, which is just indicating that this is a mock object, it's not a real email service object. And now you are passing in the account, and when you deposit, let's see what's going over here. When you send email with amount, it is just bypassing, like it's just skipping, so our balance is not updated. So that is why our logic fails, so we are getting this error. And as I mentioned, like I want this service to be true, it's sending the email should always be true. Then same thing over here, now you can make this mocking email service. Since it requires argument of any, you can even say, in this case, let's say we are passing depositing at 100 years, so let's say 100. When the send email with our amount is 100, then return true. So now we are mocking to make the send email true when the amount is 100. Now let's see what will happen when you run the unit test. So it should pass, say pass. Now if you say you are passing deposit 100, right, but if you say, okay, in case of you are depositing 200 only, then return true, then what will happen? Now it will fail. It is because you are now setting the condition that this should return true only in the case when the amount is 200, but you are passing 100 over here, right? So that is why it is like not it is not executing this service, and not bypassing. So you have to use either 100 or to match the the amount that you are bypassing, or you can say argument that any integer, and this will check it will just ignore any amount, whatever. It doesn't care about any amount, whatever amount it will pass. It doesn't care about the argument it is receiving, but whenever this method is executed, it will always return true. Now if you debug it, what will happen, I will show you. Now when you debug it, right, we arrange that thing. When you deposit, now the amount is 100, but as I mentioned, we set up that doesn't matter whatever amount that's return true, so it will go inside and execute our logic that we want to test, and that way it will pass. So I hope you understand the concept of using the NSubstitute, how important that NSubstitute can be when you want to like mock, or you want to just bypass the external dependencies, so that you can actually focus on your main like the business logic, where you want to test your unit tests, where you want to test the code. And I hope by this video you have learned something new regarding the unit testing. And this video is mainly targeting for the like the developer who is very new to unit tests. If you like this video, please give thumbs up and please subscribe my channel, and this will be a great help from you. Thank you so much, and I will see you soon in my next video. Thank you. Bye.